The Supreme Court has created a procedural mess over one of the most explicit rights conferred by the Constitution, the right for a baby born in this country to be presumed to be an American citizen except under extraordinary cases. So now what this court has done in its infinite wisdom is to raise that question state by state, issue by issue. We should have had a national injunction. That's where we were headed, and it made sense on something this basic. But now the question's going to rise in state after state. Is my baby a citizen in Kansas? Is my baby a citizen in Illinois? That mess has been left by the Supreme Court, which I think will be almost impossible to unscramble.
So, Senator, even though the court did not explicitly decide on the birthright citizenship question in this ruling, you still see it as effectively having the same impact?
It's going to create chaos and confusion, but that has been a hallmark of the Trump administration for the last 6 months. He's issued so many executive orders trying to flood the zone, as he said, to overwhelm our legal system, and today he overwhelmed the Supreme Court in a majority decision, which I think is going to be leading to more and more chaos.
Well, the president just held a news briefing at the White House, Senator, just before you joined us. He thanked the court for solving what he called the injunction problem. You wrote in a statement a short time ago that by issuing this ruling, the court is stating that courts cannot block even the most lawless actions of the Trump administration on a nationwide basis. Does that leave Congress then as the only check on the executive?
God forbid that's all that's left. The Congress, particularly the Republican majorities in the House and Senate, are willing to give away all of their authority and rights under the Constitution. The president has beaten them down, and they are cowered by him. And unfortunately, that's going to lead to more and more chaos and confusion from this administration.
Senator, can you see ways around this nationwide injunction issue? For example, widening the pool of plaintiffs bringing cases. Would class action lawsuits be a way to effectively have the same impact as a nationwide injunction rather than bringing one individual plaintiff in one individual state? Or does this really effectively leave the gates open for the administration to pursue whatever policy they want nationally, knowing it cannot, there's no way for it to be withheld on a national level?
It's a mistake to believe that a class action is just simply a procedural motion that is easily achieved. There are standards that have to be met, and when you're going to apply it to state after state, what about the states that are not in the class? It really is going to mean a divergence of rights under the Constitution, state by state, and you'd think the Supreme Court justices, with all of their knowledge, some of them law school professors, would have stopped and said, let's try to apply common sense to this first. Let's have one standard across America. Let's decide whether that standard is right or wrong. But instead, they left a helter-skelter response to this lawsuit, which is going to create a lot of confusion.
Helter-skelter, says Dick Durbin. I'm not a lawyer, Senator, and I don't think I ever could have been. If I understand this correctly, based on what we're talking about here, if there's no possible nationwide injunction, can't the Supreme Court then be facing thousands of cases? Do they have to stay in session all year?
Well, I don't know about sticking around in session. They like to take their vacations too, and they're entitled to them. But they've led this to a situation where you could have 20 or 21 states join in an action before the Supreme Court, and then serious questions as to whether the remaining states are even affected by the court decision. That really attacks the most fundamental questions of democracy and having a unified nation.
Well, and when we consider the layout of our democracy and the disparate branches of government, of which obviously the judicial is one, Senator, putting this case together, this nationwide injunction issue together with previous rulings we've seen from this Supreme Court, including the one around presidential immunity for official acts taken in office, in aggregate, what have they done to the office of the executive? How much more power has it been given?
Dramatic increases. The courts have given more power to the presidency, and as I mentioned earlier, the Republican majorities in the House and Senate are loath to ever question Donald Trump's demands for more and more authority under the Constitution. They are giving away rights right and left, and I think that is something that is a departure, a clear break from where we are in history. When Franklin Delano Roosevelt was reelected and was sick and tired of being losing in the Supreme Court, he suggested adding justices to that court. The Democratic majority in the Congress, along with the Republicans, said not only no, but hell no. We're not going to let you do this to the court. They understood the institution of Congress has a responsibility under the Constitution, and they worked together on a bipartisan basis to protect it. These Republican leaders in the House and Senate today are cowered by this president. They're afraid to step back and say the obvious. The Constitution gives us authorities the president doesn't have.
Well, Senator, I know that some of your colleagues are a little bit afraid of the idea of the president giving them a phone call this weekend about his so-called big, beautiful bill. We'd love to ask your thoughts on the reconciliation process, knowing that this timeline appears to be sliding, and the president said just now in his briefing at the White House that he's not wedded to this July 4th deadline. Whether it's Medicaid, whatever else the parliamentarian kicks out of the bill, lack of a deal on SALT. What's going to happen here? Are you planning to work this weekend, or did this just move into July?
Well, I've reported for duty. I'd rather be home, I can tell you that. But I have a job to do out here. I've been waiting patiently for the Republicans to present legislation. They can't come up with a formula that is going to give enough money for more tax breaks for the wealthy without cutting some fundamental things like health insurance for 16 million families, raising the cost of health insurance for many others, and cutting into Medicare programs, which are supposed to be sacred. And because they've had these problems, they've been twisting and trying to find some alternative the parliamentarian will accept. Without success at that level, we continue to wait and wait. But the fundamentals of this proposal are just plain wrong. $346,000 tax break for Elon Musk. For goodness sakes, will he even notice it? I mean, that kind of thing at the expense of downstate hospitals in Kansas and Missouri and Iowa and Illinois, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, Senator, what do you and your colleagues in the minority have within your power to slow down this process to any extent? Will there be lots of amendments, procedural hurdles thrown up, knowing that because this is reconciliation, party line is the expectation here?
We're going to give to the Republicans express specific choices by amendments so the American people can see how they'll vote. You know, just basic amendments as to whether or not you really want to cut the benefits under Medicare, whether or not you want to deny assistance to, as I said, downstate hospitals, rural hospitals, inner city hospitals, close them down and make it difficult for people to find quality health care. You know, those are going to be amendments offered by the Democrats because that's part of the package of tax breaks for wealthy people.
Are you hearing from any of your Republican colleagues who have conversations in your office, maybe when we're not around, Senator Durbin, about their feelings on this? There are a number I could name, including Tom Tillis, of course, Rand Paul, and others who are very concerned about different elements of this bill. And at the moment, we keep hearing that John Thune does not have the votes to pass it. Could there be a coalition of Democrats like yourself and some nervous Republicans who sink this bill?
It takes 4 senators, 4 Republican senators to step up and say, this is a bad idea and we can't make it any better. We got to step aside and go back to the regular bipartisan process. We'll have to give up some things that are important to us, but we're going to serve the American people with the appropriations that are necessary to keep our government functioning. Unfortunately, this reconciliation approach has taken a long time and they've been unable to resolve it.